mode.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to our live web event, Benchmarking the Cost of Unused Software. My name is Laurie Eisman, Global Director of Marketing for 1E, and your host for today's event. We're very excited for everyone to join us as we share and discuss the results of this benchmarking study and identify areas where companies can focus their software license cleanup efforts and reduce the hidden costs of unused software. We will cover the relationship between the growth of software waste relative to company size, how you can benchmark your waste and focus efforts on high-yield reclamation, the top problem titles, and where you should begin your investigation. We are joined by Buffy Neal, 1E's Senior Financial IT Analyst. Buffy has worked with hundreds of global organizations analyzing their software estate and helping them reclaim unused software, saving their companies millions of dollars. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. You'll see a question box on the right-hand side of the screen or in the upper right-hand corner if you're on a mobile device where you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. We will address your questions at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded and you will receive access to the slides and the recording to view again or pass to your peers. With that said, let's begin. Buffy?
Hi, welcome to the webinar, Benchmarking the Hidden Cost of Unused Software. First, let me give you a quick overview of 1E. We're a software lifecycle automation company. We're committed to both our customers and the industry as a whole. Because of our intellectual curiosity, we hold more than 40 patents. We have 31 technology awards, deployed in over 26 million desktops globally across 17,000 organizations. So on to the benchmark findings. So 1E conducted a 2-year global benchmark study. The bulk of the study participants, or the highest sampling, were in the UK and the US. The general findings or overview of the findings were that 28% of all deployed software is going unused. That's software that was paid for, deployed, and then sits. If you just look at the top 35 titles, that can equate to over $7 billion globally in software waste. So let's dig a little deeper into it. So just to talk about the benchmark data sampling and where these numbers come from. So we looked at 74 companies across 13 industries. We looked at over 1,800 deployed packages. Next year we'll be releasing a new finding that increases the company count to over 100 companies and 2.5 million users. As you can see, the study, it kind of is very strong in finance, energy, manufacturing, hitting 1.8 million users. So this gives you an idea of how we collected the data. So we pulled the data directly from Microsoft SCCM database into AppClarity. For those of you who aren't aware of AppClarity, it's 1E software asset management tool. From AppClarity, we generated a waste extract. From the waste extract at the bottom left, you can see, so what AppClarity will generate is for each title on a desktop, what's the number deployed on desktops and laptops, and of those deployed, how many are unused and how many are rarely used. We then consolidated all the software versions because AppClarity is very specific. It gets all the way down to the software version level, but for the study we consolidate the versions up. We then added supplementary data. So supplementary data such as company seat count, company size, what industry the company's in, what country they're in, and added all of that data into our 1E benchmark database. So what are the findings? We have visibility into global software waste. The results are pretty astounding. So we found that 33% of all deployed software is wasted. And what we mean by wasted is the combination of rarely used and unused software. So we use the number 28%. You might see that a lot of analysts are now using that number. 28% of all software goes unused. But there's also the idea of rarely used. So what is unused software? Unused software means something different to every company. But for this study and in general, unused software is software that has been sitting on a desktop or laptop and has not been touched by that user in 90 days. That's configurable, but that's just, in general, 90 days is kind of the industry norm or what companies are setting their unused to be. So if we look at it by industry, what industries have the most waste and what industries are doing a little better, you'll see that pharmaceuticals is leading the pack in unused software at 56%. Healthcare is sitting at 20%, and finance is sitting at about the average, 33%, which makes sense because the bulk or a good portion of our sampling were definitely in the finance industry. But even at 20%, let's just think about the 20% number, even at 20%, which is the lowest findings, that's still a lot of room for improvement. And just note that, important note about our study, we conducted the study on companies prior to implementing a software asset optimization strategy or tool like AppClarity. So what does that look like when compared to company size? So we took a look at the software waste compared to the size of a company, and we were actually surprised. Originally, we had thought that the larger your company is, the more software waste you're going to have. But it's actually not true. Smaller companies have much higher waste than, average size companies, say 20,000, 50,000 employees. And what we found is that the smaller companies, might not have a software asset manager. They might have a lot of rogue installations. They may just not have control over what their users are putting on their endpoints. As your company starts to grow and get up around 20,000 users, 50,000 users, that's when you start becoming very strong about putting a software asset management in place, maybe a team. And then as your company grows larger into the 100,000 or 500,000 employees, we do see the waste start to increase again. And we're guessing that the ratio of end users to software asset managers or the people controlling the software is a little bit higher weighted on the user end. But on average, you're looking at 33% waste across the board. So how does that look by country? So U.S. is definitely leading the globe in software waste. And just to understand, when we say the globe, we did have a heavy sampling in just UK and US, although it was a global study. We did pull, for this sampling, when we did it by country, we did pull out some of the smaller samplings. So what does that mean, 36% unused software? How much money is that? And this is really just a copy of what I showed in an earlier slide. If we're considering only the top 35 titles, you are looking at a total waste of $224 per employee US on average. Top titles. So let's take a real good look at what the offending software titles are. So this represents the top 35 titles that are most commonly deployed across our benchmark findings, or across the 1.8 million desktops analyzed by 1E. I don't think these titles will be a surprise to anyone who's in software asset management or software asset optimization field. The thing to note here is this would be a great starting point if you're looking to do some sort of software asset optimization strategy, if you're looking to put in some kind of reclamation or get a handle on your compliance. Most companies have thousands of software titles installed, and sometimes it's not easy to know where to focus, unless you're having an audit coming, and then you obviously know where to focus. The other thing to note here is some important titles, your focus should not just be on your high-priced titles. So yes, SQL Optimizer for Oracle, sits at about $2,000 per license, but and WinZip may sit at $20 or $30. They're both important. WinZip, even though only $20, might be deployed to 75% of your desktops. It might be an application that is more often installed by an end user without the help of IT. So you're going to get more software sprawl on some of the lower cost titles like WinZip. Something like SQL Optimizer for Oracle, high priced, high reclamation. Things like Attachmate, Reflection X. I know Reflection X we've found to be a really good title to focus reclamation on because it has a high audit rate. A lot of companies are commonly over-deployed on their Attachmate software. So you want to make sure to concentrate on both widely distributed applications and also high-cost applications. And obviously the Microsoft. So if you look at the Microsoft tab, when I have Visio on there, part of the 35 applications would be Visio Professional and Standard, Project Professional and Standard. They both showed up equally when we looked at most commonly deployed applications. So let's break them down. Top 9 titles. Top vendors: Attachmate, Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk. We also have IBM, and the others are important too, but I figured we'd focus on these top 9. So what we have here is, for each software title, we're showing you our benchmark study, the percentage deployed. So for example, Visio Standard, we find that Visio Standard on average is deployed to 10% of your desktops in your enterprise. But of those deployments, almost half of them are going unused. Visio is a great title to start focus your reclamation or focus your compliance efforts on. Visio often sits outside of your Microsoft EA agreement. It's often purchased as a one-by-one license, and it does have a high unused rate on average. Another good example, AutoCAD. While AutoCAD is only installed on average 1% of the desktops, it goes unused 56% of the time. Also, AutoCAD is a $1,200 application. But I think the thing to really, if you take nothing away from this webinar today, take away this percentage waste column. Okay, these are all titles that all of you have in your enterprise. Visio, Project, Office, Photoshop, maybe not the Autodesks, those are a little more specialty, but Attachmate. The percentage wastes are so high. They're over half, 39%, 60%, Inventor at 52%. So it can't be denied that there definitely is a problem, and an easy solution really. So what to do with the waste? So that kind of segued right into the solution. So there are ways you can transform your software waste into savings. If we know, or our study has shown that 28% of all software is unused. That means that there's $266 of reclaimable software sitting on each user's desktop, on average, right? Some companies have more, some companies have less. Now we know that, if you're able to reclaim that unused software from the desktops, Adobe is not going to come and write you a check for what you've reclaimed, right? So sometimes it's not really clear how the savings comes, but you can make use of that reclaimed software. The first saving driver would be maintenance avoidance. So you've reclaimed all this software. You've put it into a software repository, such as AppClarity is a tool that does this. But so you've reclaimed it. What do you do with it? Well, some of it you can get immediate maintenance avoidance. You cancel maintenance on it. Now, you don't want to cancel maintenance on everything you've reclaimed. You want to do an assessment, make sure that you keep enough in reserve to divvy out when people ask for software. But there are plenty of titles that you're currently paying maintenance on that you can immediately cancel maintenance. It's direct savings to your immediate budget. The other way to save if you put a reclamation process in place would be purchase avoidance. So while Adobe's obviously not writing you a check for what you've pulled off of the endpoints, we know that you're purchasing new software at a 10% per year increase. So companies, even companies that are decreasing their employee counts, are still increasing their software purchases. We're finding 10 to 12% increases per year. And that's, there are plenty of reasons why that is. Some of it is just general fluctuation in your employee count. People leave, people come, you might have vendors coming in. So if you're purchasing 10% of software every year, if you're able to reuse that reclaimed software, well then you're having a direct avoidance of purchase, a direct savings. Also, when you have a purchase avoidance savings, you were able to reuse a license and not have to purchase new, you're also going to have future maintenance avoidance on that because you didn't have to purchase a new license. You're able to then save on future years' maintenance. Also, compliance and EA. Now, obviously, there's, just putting in a reclamation process in place is a huge savings around and a huge risk mitigation. We've had companies put a reclamation process around only 2 titles and able to save huge amounts on EA negotiation, audits, true-ups. So that is not computed. So when I compute the savings, I don't even take into account the risk mitigation and audit savings. I'm only looking at this reclamation savings. So looking at your number, $266 per user of software that's reclaimable software, if you're able to then transform that into savings, some percentage of that can then be saved. And when we calculate the savings, we calculate it over 3 years. So when you reclaim a piece of software, you're only going to redeploy it at approximately a 10% rate. Since your unused rates are high in the 28 to 50% range, you're going to have some reclaimed software that year 1 won't get reused, but you can use it year 2 and year 3. And so if you're looking at a company the size of 10,000 employees and a company the size of 20,000, so I've done the number for both sizes, just looking at, for example, Extra Extreme, if you're able to put a reclamation process in place for Extra Extreme, your 3-year savings for a 10,000 seat company would be $124,000. And I've done the savings numbers for each. So Visio, $58,000, $100,000 for a 20,000 seat company. Project Professional, $156,000. Office, and so on. And so obviously these are just averages, but these are actually numbers that we're seeing in the field for companies. When we go back and check up on them, companies are actually saving this and more. So this is a conservative look at the savings. But the thing to note here is look at the 10,000 seat company. We're looking at reclamation of only 9 titles. Add up those numbers down the first column. It's considerable. So this is, most companies, when they do start paying attention to software asset optimization, they do start out small. They may start out with Adobe, Attachmate, Microsoft, and then they grow. But they certainly hit more than 9 titles. If you look at, so what does that look like looking at the top 35 titles? So what if you put in a reclamation process and you were able to do something with the software waste? Just looking at the top 35 titles over 3 years, a 10,000 seat company can look at a savings of 2.1 million. A 20,000 seat company, 4.3 million. And just to give you an idea of how conservative these numbers are, we only considered that you would be reclaiming 75% of your unused and 25% of your rarely used. Many companies put a reclamation process in and they try and hit 100%. They may end up sitting around the 90% range. So that's a conservative estimate. We have spread the savings over 3 years. And we also made very conservative assumptions about your redeploy rate at 10%. So I don't know where your companies sit, but you can do the math yourself. This 1E is using benchmarks to focus reclaim. So I think one of the messages here that I'd like you to take away is that 1,000 titles in your environment is hard to think about how are you going to put a process in place for 1,000 titles. But if you start to focus your reclaim on your top titles, top 35, top 10, top 5, top 2, and start the process out slow, then you can build upon your process. So we work with our customers to do a benchmark analysis. We do offer this as a complimentary service to prospects as well. And what we do is we look at their unused data against our benchmarks to help them focus on their high egregious waste titles. It's not, it's not definite that if it's a high waste, they'll start a reclamation process on it. But what that does is comparing yourself to benchmarks, it really clearly shows you where your waste is, the titles that are egregious. And some of them you may not care. They may be licensed in such a way that it's okay if they're installed everywhere. But it's just one more way to allow you to focus your effort. So call to action, want to know more. So like I said, we have a complimentary benchmark analysis that we do for prospects and also with our customers. We also have a software reclaim assessment that's available. And both of these are against your actual data. So we run our App Clarity against your SCCM database, and then we report on your actual unused data. We've done the software reclamation assessment for a number of many large companies who were able to then use that to fight an imminent audit. We also have our new 1E blog, Better ITAM. So if you just want to get in on the discussion, we're posting articles daily. If you want to just start talking to some of our ITAM experts, go to that blog. You'll see that we employ 4 of the leading experts in the industry. You can contact SAO at 1E.com if you want to learn more about our software asset optimization offerings. And then I will pass it back to Lori.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Buffy. That was great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You will notice that Buffy pointed out our contact information on the slides and all the other resources. So, and you will get a copy of these slides, so you'll have that. Prior to addressing your questions, I just want to thank you again today for attending. And just to remind you, you can enter questions into the question box, which if you're on a laptop is on the right-hand side of your screen, or the upper right-hand corner if you're on a mobile device. So we do have a question. Buffy, the first question, it looks like your software titles are definitely PC-based. While this definitely represents an opportunity to save money, server-based software is generally more costly and represents more risk. Do you consider this as well?
Yeah, that is a great question. We definitely work in the field of server software. It's just that our benchmark study doesn't include server software. Okay. But 1E as a company does that, and reach out to SAO at 1E.com for details around our server SAO.
Okay, great. All right, the next question, what qualifies a piece of software to be labeled unused?
Great question. So unused software is software that has not been touched by the end user in 90 days, This is configurable based on your company, so you can change those. You can make it, greater than 90 days, but on average, and for our study, that's what it's 90 days.
Great. Next question, can we get a copy of the 1E benchmark database?
We're not currently giving out copies of the benchmark database, but we are providing our complimentary benchmark analysis, and we will be publishing another finding in 2015.
Okay, and where can I find a copy of your benchmark study findings?
So the benchmark study, if you go up to the 1E website, www.1e.com, and you look under our software asset management or App Clarity product, you'll see our benchmark study up there.
Great. Okay. Great questions today from our audience. Thank you again for your participation and for joining us. If you do have a question in the future or anything else you'd like to know, just reach out to either Buffy or myself or the SAO@1E.com email, and we'll be happy to help you. As a reminder, you will receive a link to the slides and a recording of today's presentation to view again or pass to your peers. Thank you again, and please keep an eye out for information on our upcoming webinars. We look forward to seeing you soon. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you.